Folks, what's up? Oh my goodness, I'm very excited to have this man on. I'm going to actually let him introduce himself now. Actually, let's just get into it. So go ahead, introduce yourself.
Sure. My name's Lincoln Rice. I'm located in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, he, him pronouns, and I'm the coordinator for a group called the National War Tax Resistance Coordinating Committee. For short, we often call it NUTRIC or NUTRAC.
Okay. Now, I'm doing things like all the time, and were we in a meeting? I just forgot how I met you. Maybe I just was researching you guys. Were we in any meetings together or anything like that?
No, you just gave me a call one day and we talked on the phone.
Okay, I'm also sometimes doing research, so it's hard for me to remember. I got so much stuff cooked up right now. Anyways, but let's get into just the online activist interview. I have over 100 interviews with activists all around the world, and I asked them all the same questions. So, you know, you can actually, if you think these questions are interesting, you can actually compare these questions to other people that have been interviewed as well. So let's get into it. First of all, nice to meet you. So first question I'm going to ask is, some people, they say they have like a certain ideology. They'll say like, I'm a socialist, and then there's conservatives, right? That isn't necessarily like in an economic framework, but there's a different, right? There might have people who follow a certain, so do you have like an ideology that helps frame your activism?
Yeah, and I'll be clear, I'm only speaking for myself, not for the group I'm the coordinator for, but on a personal level, I'm a communitarian anarchist, and a lot of that comes out of my experience and participation in the Catholic worker movement, which was founded by communitarian anarchists, and this thought that the state has a limited role, and at the end of the day, if you want to see change, it needs to be people making that change, people working for that change, and the ballot box will have a very limited role in producing the changes we're hoping for.
I must admit, I'm completely fascinated. I myself identify as the anarchist, just so you know. I don't know if you knew that. You're like, why is he in the Trump world? We'll get to that later, but totally valid question. But and the thing is, the anarchist world, I don't know about where you are. You're what part of the country again?
I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Cool. Okay, that's an important swing state, by the way. So I definitely want to keep in contact with you. Yeah, a lot of bells went off there. Okay, so the thing is that the anarchists, there's going to be like your animal rights people. They're a significant portion. You got your other people that are like straight edgers. You got your another community over here, right? And that's the way anarchists really kind of are. They're kind of like almost like anything goes, really, right? So, this is new for me. What is you said communitarian?
Yes.
What is
I'd say it follows more along the lines of someone like Kropotkin, where Kropotkin was an anthropologist, Russian, and he was very much opposed in his views of anthropology and biology of this notion of survival of the fittest. When he would look at the animal world, he was really taken aback by how much he saw different species working together and collaborating together. And so it's there definitely are certain strands of maybe, more self-centered anarchism. You could take it to kind of this destructive extreme that you see in Heath Ledger's Joker in, The Dark Knight. But this would be on kind of the opposite extreme that says, no, people, we're social animals. We naturally want to work together. And that if that wasn't the case, we probably would already be extinct.
Okay. That's cool. So how is this different from like other, like, you have your anarchist communists? I'm not sure how that works out, but there are people who say they have like this type of different idea. I think that, or sometimes they say like they're anarchist libertarian socialists or whatever. There's a lot of so this communitarian thing is kind of like a different branch. It does sound some similarities, but the name is not the same. Is there a reason for this particular split, and how wide is this communitarian movement thing? It's my first time. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, at least in the United States, I'm most familiar with it within the Catholic worker movement, which is this movement that started in the 1930s and is mostly known for its pacifist stance, its creation of houses of hospitality, where it provides housing, different types of housing for people who need it. There's an activist portion of it where it's not uncommon for many people in the movement, including myself, to have been arrested on numbers of occasions and acts of civil disobedience. And there's a more controversial part, even within the Catholic worker movement, is there's more of a back to the land movement as part of it, also an anti-industrialism type of aspect to it, largely stemming from the thought that with industrialism and with most types of government, we see power we see too much power centered in either government or certain individuals who may own the means of production, aspects like that. And so this communitarian anarchism is definitely for spreading out wealth among individuals. And from the religious aspect, there's often a quote attributed to Saint Gertrude that the more common property is, the more holy it is. And so it would be, yeah, so it's definitely follows more also a distributist economic model as opposed to capitalist or communist / socialist model, where it doesn't want property to be centered in the hands of the few or the government, but again, spread out as much as possible among the masses.
Interesting. Okay. This is fascinating. I'm just being an anarchist myself. I'm really enjoy diving into this. Tell you the truth, I'm not really all about the old guys. I know Kropotkin's actually a very well-known, anarchist, like writer and stuff like that. I have not actually. I need to actually read his book at some point, but I'm very skeptical of works from the past or even today. So, but this is really about you, not me, right? But I'm just really, it's fascinating. Really appreciate that. Also, I'm also wondering about, you said the Catholic workers movement. Are you Catholic yourself?
Yes. But I will say the Catholic worker movement itself is often made up of folks who are Catholic. Other Christian denominations are not religious at all. It's, I'd say it definitely it was founded by and started by Catholic individuals in the 30s, but it's kind of grown beyond that. And there's probably in the United States around 150 plus different communities that are each separate. It's non-hierarchical. Each community kind of makes its decisions using consensus, or at least for the most part. And then each community is completely separate from one another and independent.
Interesting. Have you also have you ever you've heard of like permaculture, things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's actually a big movement, I think, with a lot of anarchists to actually move, kind of like drop out, move into like, communes and, or, just get away from it all. So it sounds like you're kind of like also aligning somewhat with that community. I have a group called Evolving Seeds that actually my guy from Colorado is running. He actually helps band together other, activists, and he's an anarchist too. So I'm introduced to you. I don't know if you're on Discord, but it might be an interesting way to put things together. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, so that would definitely be.
Okay. Now the thing is that.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's definitely a connection.
Okay. So the next question.
Okay. Or I was just gonna say there is a back.
Go ahead. You can clear that up. Okay. So
that this back to the land element.
Go ahead.
There definitely are groups of Catholic workers who have started Catholic worker communes and farms, and many of them have adopted permaculture principles in doing that, because they're definitely wanting to shy away from only planting one crop and using pesticides and all of these things that harm the land and harm us then when we consume the goods of the land.
It really aligns so much with the communitarian ideals from what I hear from you, right? Yeah, the whole idea of working together, synergy, right? I'm not sure that I think that's always true, but I do see the sometimes it's true, and I think it's it's a good ideal, and it's more of a harmonic type of thing. And I also wanted to ask you, have you ever or are you influenced by the book Ishmael? Have you heard that book?
I've read it.
It has that Christian background. It has this type of how do you align with that? Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I buy it as a good interpretation. I'm pulling back from like 25 years ago, but as I recall, like one of the crux of the argument is, going back to Cain and Abel, and they're isn't farming viewed as harmful, and the emphasis should be on not farming and moving more towards a hunter-gatherer sort of society?
The idea is that creating a industrialized society, creating, civilization can actually create, problems, right? I think that's the big idea. So farming is a part of it, but I think it's more the idea of industrialized farming, where this type of large monoculture is developed, and these kinds of societies form where now you start to have large communities where greater amounts of government and evil can start to propagate.
Yeah,
it's all good. I just was wondering, right? Yeah, because it seems to have some alignment.
I just don't know if it's a proper interpretation of Genesis, but I definitely I can see some alignment of ideas, and I can see where that book can be helpful with understanding how past ideas and past notions of our relationship with the land should be further explored. Not that they should be taken carte blanche, but there's good in the past to retrieve.
Good to know. Yeah, honestly, that's probably the most in depth I've ever gone with ideology, just because because we have so much similarities that it's just I can really dive into that just a little bit more, which is kind of cool. Appreciate that. Now, sometimes people you might hear if they say they're a Democrat, they may say I'm an FDR Democrat, or I'm a Bill Clinton Democrat, whatever, right? They could say whatever they want, right? So within the framework you already said Kropotkin, maybe, but is there any? Maybe he's the main influencer, but is it someone who's maybe it's Jesus? Who knows, right? But who's influential to your activist philosophy and the way that you do things? Or influential. It could be anybody, or it could be a couple people. You don't have to just say one, but who's influential for?
It would definitely be the founders of the Catholic worker movement, who are Dorothy Day and Peter Maurin. And Dorothy Day, when Pope Francis came to the United States and spoke before Congress, he singled out 4 influential Americans, influential in a good way, including people like Thomas Merton and Martin Luther King Jr. But he also singled out Dorothy Day because of her cause for looking out notions of voluntary poverty, social justice, solidarity with the poor, all those sorts of ideas. She's written both of them. Peter Maurin was a French peasant who came to the United States, and they started these communities together in the 1930s and started pushing these ideas of communitarian anarchism. And those would definitely be the 2 most influential individuals for me in my activism.
Interesting. All right, cool. That's very I'm actually gonna I didn't those are new names to me. They may have popped before, but I probably didn't remember them. I'm definitely watching some YouTube videos on them. I can't wait. I'm pretty fascinated. Yeah, it's pretty cool. All right. So now the thing is that everybody kind of starts their activist journey a little bit differently. I know the Catholic, if you were like a workers union, right, you're probably like a little bit older at that time. Maybe there's something else you worked on earlier. Maybe you've been an activist your whole life. It sounds like maybe you always had this type of, maybe not, right? Who knows? But what's the first kind of activist activity, or the first kind of like activist stuff that you were kind of involved with?
It probably starts with in high school. I was very interested in religious writings, and that's how, going to the library, I just started picking up religious texts off the shelf that looked interesting. And one of them was Dorothy Day, the Catholic worker co-founder, her autobiography. And I think that really kind of set me on the journey. That was the first time I'd really, other than hearing of people like Martin Luther King, but it's the first time I really heard of someone promoting activism about how she did it in her own life, and promoting it as just a way to live, not necessarily for a specific campaign, but as a way of life to transform society. And I think that then led me later on. I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, but later on, when I was going to college in Milwaukee, I saw that the Catholic worker here was having a protest at a local gun shop. And I saw it through a Peace Action newsletter. that they were mentioned it. So I biked over there, and that was kind of my very first time protesting. They brought the signs. I was holding a sign. I've gone to a lot of these. It's a very small protest, just a handful of us. And I've done those protests, those smaller little protests now, I don't know, probably hundreds of times over the years. And that was one of the very few times that for such a small protest, a police officer showed up, which to me was a very intimidating experience at that time. And it's strange because the police officer, first, he is out there kind of making fun of us. We were protesting kind of this reliance on guns and violence, and this gun shop that was, supplying weapons that were being used to kill people in the city of Milwaukee. And this police officer was essentially making fun of us. And then he went in the gun shop himself, I don't know what for, and came out later, made fun of us a little bit again, and then, drove off. But that was kind of my first kind of just tipping my toes into it. I started going to those types of protests against the use of guns, but also they still do this, have a popular monthly, I don't know, popular. There's a monthly protest, popular among us, where we protest the ROTC, or essentially the military presence on the local Catholic university. And that also led me then to maybe in the next year going down to Georgia for what at the time was a yearly protest against the School of the Americas, and kind of seeing this solidarity between activists in the United States who had started organizing these protests because of their experiences of being in Central and South America and seeing the authoritarianism and the militarism that was harming their society. And the leaders of many of this militarism and authoritarianism, many of whom had been trained in the United States at the School of the Americas. So that was kind of also not only an introduction to activism, but kind of a growing knowledge of U.S. influence in a very negative way in different parts of the world.
What is the School of the Americas thing? Like, is that an actual school, or did you just mean like America, like as a big, big country or something? What is the School of America?
Yeah, the School of they changed the name, but when I first started going down there, it was literally called the School of the Americas. It was located on the Fort Benning military base in Georgia. I think maybe because it was a short name, it was easy among our sort of activists to spread news about it. They shortly after changed the name to the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation. But among activists, we still just call it the School of the Americas. I believe they also used to have a school in Panama. But, I don't know, you may be familiar. One of the more, Oscar Romero was an archbishop in El Salvador who was starting to speak out against, the military dictatorship that was disappearing people in El Salvador during the 70s. And he was murdered while saying mass in 1980. And most of the soldiers who were later implicated in that murder had been trained in the United States at Fort Benning, Georgia, at the School of the Americas. Essentially, this school, which still exists, its stated purpose is to, help our neighbors in Central and South America, root out insurgents. And by insurgents, they often mean people who are working
have
for
interesting
in their own country. So it's part of our foreign aid.
Okay. Those are good points. We're going to have after this is done, we're going to have a really interesting discussion on the live, hopefully, right? Yeah, because I have, just a can of worms just opened up. I'm just super interested. Anyways, let's go to the next question over here. So the thing is that people come to this interview series and with different levels of experience, different levels of stuff, right? So just to help, my audience really understand where you stand, what are some of the things that you are most proud of accomplishing? as an activist?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'd view my active, like I'm also connected to a Catholic worker house of hospitality here in Milwaukee where we take in families that need a place to stay. So I kind of view these as two sides of the same coin, like being connected with folks who are regularly, harmed by political policies in the United States, which are doing things like funding the military, funding the police and the militarization of police, but not doing enough to make sure that everyone has enough to eat, or that there's proper housing, access to quality jobs, things like that. And so part of it, my work there that, has helped with housing of, hundreds of folks over the years, but also, I'm sorry, I don't know if you can hear my dog in the
Don't worry about it. Yeah, don't worry about it. This is not for the regular public. Doesn't watch this. This is really for people who are activists, and activists won't care, and they'll deal with it.
But also, I think early on, so I got involved and moved into a Catholic. Now I live down the street, but I had moved into and lived in a Catholic worker community started in 1998. And so another person there shortly afterwards, maybe within the next couple of years, was kind of also helpful for me in kind of expanding my view of what it means to be an activist, which is not just kind of me doing what I think is appropriate, but also being there and supporting other groups that who are having trouble getting their voice out there, but are being affected directly by some of our economic policies in the United States. And so early on, our community here got involved with having protests at Taco Bell's to support the Coalition of Immokalee Pickers. Yeah, the Coalition of Immokalee tomato pickers in Florida. And so they were trying to, essentially they were working at very low wages where, if they were willing to pick tomatoes for 12 hours a day, they might be lucky to make $50. And that's, just piecemeal work. There's no vacation. There's no health care. There's no sick days. You're just being paid that $50 a day if you're working like 12 hours. And they wanted to be paid an extra penny per pound of tomatoes. So over the years, eventually Taco Bell, which is owned by Yum Foods, had signed an agreement. And so, we were very happy to be a part of that. We also, back then, and granted, this is good 20 years ago, there was a Taco Bell that was wanting to have a place at one of our local colleges. And we worked with some students there and stopped the Taco Bell, like the university, because of the influence of the protesters here in Milwaukee, decided to against Taco Bell. Everything was like ready to be signed. And then they rejected Taco Bell's application because of their because they were getting these tomatoes and not supporting these coalition of Immokalee tomato pickers in Florida. We've then moved on, and now we do protests at Wendy's from time to time, but we've also, at one point I got arrested at a Trader Joe's when they were trying to put pressure on Trader Joe's to sign an agreement. And so that's kind of working with that group, even though I've only met them in person once, or kind of early on. They were doing a bus tour where some of the tomato pickers were going across the country to try to raise awareness, and we hosted them here.
That actually makes me wonder. So you guys singled out Taco Bell, but then, like you said, like Trader Joe's is also selling tomatoes. A lot of places sell tomatoes. Why did you guys select Taco Bell? Right? Versus maybe Burger King, Whoppers have tomatoes. Why Taco Bell?
Sure. Well, we chose Taco Bell because that's what the coalition wanted us to choose. And the coalition, the pickers themselves in Florida, they began their protest with choosing Taco Bell specifically because, unlike, let's say, a McDonald's, which is more, all their advertising is much more geared towards trying to get little kids to go there, Happy Meals and all the rest, especially 20 plus years ago, where Taco Bell, it was known for having a more college, high school clientele. And so it was also viewed as a group that might be more interested, and possibly perhaps a chance to radicalize some of their customers who might be more open to this than parents who might see a protester while they're trying to drag their kid into McDonald's and just want to get the kid to, to be quiet. That's why they specifically chose that. And they've moved on to each group that they moved on to was usually, I know when they were focusing on Trader Joe's, part of the thought was Trader Joe's likes to kind of uplift themselves as a more moral place to shop for groceries. Yet they're getting these tomatoes where, it's the workers are not being treated well. So again, the thought was the average person who shops at Trader Joe's as compared to going to a different grocery store chain might be more open to pressuring Trader Joe's to sign an agreement.
I like that so much. Yeah. The thing is, I like the way you guys are thinking. I like that. Yeah. I like people who do a little bit. That made sense. Actually, I didn't even think of that myself. So that's always fun. Yeah. Okay. So now I'm done with kind of like know you. Right now, I'm going to ask questions about your activism. So, and this is basically, this series is really to help other people that are learning to become activists, things like that, So what do you think are the most effective things that activists can do?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What do you think are the most effective things that activists can do?
I think the first is to listen. To not just say like, well, here's a problem, I'm going to go off and do something. I mean, maybe there's definitely a place for that sometimes, but hearing what the problems are, to make sure that we're not just going in and causing a different problem, so kind of getting a full sense of what the issues are, for instance, if I'm out protesting at not anymore at Taco Bell, but now Wendy's, where they've been focusing for quite a few years, if someone does want to stop and talk to me, I know about the situation. I can tell them where to go on the internet, to have that knowledge, which hopefully made my decision of what I'm doing in my activism a good decision, but also I can communicate it to folks, and doing it together, and I think that's the other part. There are the protests that as a community here in Milwaukee, we might go and, we might have our own pet projects because of our focus on pacifism, and because many of us are Catholic, we like to go and focus on the militarism at the local Catholic university and say they should remove the military training here with the ROTC program, but a lot of what we're trying to do is also then connected to larger issues, and doing it together, like I said, with the example of the Coalition of Immokalee Workers, but also with my war tax resistance. That's been, there's a long tradition of that. And it's, with that, it was taking the time to learn how to do war tax resistance, what the possible consequences are. And I guess I'd say, depending on what city you're in, if activism means being out on the streets, in some cities, police and the city attorney have very different policies about how to treat protesters. You might, Milwaukee, for the most part, if you're protesting and you're on property you're not supposed to be on, you're looking at trespassing or at most a disorderly conduct charge. But different cities, or even different cities, depending on what you're protesting and what the race of the protester might be, could have different consequences. So, you definitely want to be aware of those consequences, take the time to learn that. And being a part of a group, I think there's often a group knowledge. And, so I guess when we say effective, I think that's just kind of the baseline. I kind of view maybe sometimes the activism is more just being a witness, like when we're protesting on Marquette's university campus. There, it's kind of more of a witness to just point to how this university, which wants to say it's Catholic and is promoting these Catholic principles of living together in justice and peace, is also training people for the military to be sent all over the world. I don't know how effective that is, but hopefully it raises awareness. So there is kind of a spectrum where where as for instance, the Coalition of Immokalee Workers, there we have seen there, I think partially because we were plugging into a much larger base of protest, we've actually had victories, and it's much more of an organized campaign. So, and I think just being honest with myself with what kind of activism I'm looking to do, and realizing that different forms of activism and different groups of people might have, hopefully realize, if you go into it thinking that, well, I'm just going to hold a sign or I'm going to go protest this and that'll change, without taking time to learn more about all the dynamics, it could lead to early burnout or disillusionment, just thinking, where it could be, there are things that are kind of long haul projects. I'm very supportive and, of protests to support the, people in Gaza, realizing that I would be more pessimistic about a solution in the short term, or, a resolution that's just in the short term. It's, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't protest. So I don't know. I feel I've been rambling, but
No, that's actually, you're really, just so you know, there's so much relevance in the things you're saying. I really am holding myself back from just spewing out like all the stuff that I have to respond to that. We're gonna wait till after the interview, but I really want this to be your time to really understand. I think that was a great answer, just so you know. Just also, I don't know if you got to my website, pgf7.com, being, affected by war has hugely impacted my own activism itself. So you being in this field is, there's just a lot of crossover. So what you're saying is absolutely right in a lot of ways. Just want to also just get a little clarification. You said witnessing, but there's a lot of people who will witness things going down, but they never testify, right? So I think in your definition of witnessing, you're also talking about a testifying witness versus just a silent witness, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The point is to raise knowledge about, especially with the witnessing part, you want to raise knowledge of it so that people can't say I didn't know. So there.
And the listening part was actually very astute, and and on multiple levels, I can see that being very, first of all, you got to meet them where they are. Are they, how much do they know about the topic, right? What are their real interests and motivations? There's so many reasons to actually, that makes a lot of sense. So overall, I don't share all the views 100%, but I do actually really appreciate the intelligent way that you're going about achieving your goals. And I'm a big fan so far. So I really like, your answer so far. I think it's very cool. And I really hope we could do some more work together, just on the strength of hearing the way that you go about doing your activity. I just think it's very cool. All right. The next question is that, and it's very cool that you actually are the director of your own organization. It sounds like you've actually worked under people as well. It's an organizational question. Now, the thing is that sometimes people come to an organization and they have their own issues going on. I think you even mentioned that before. But, and sometimes, the organization can't be really doing everything, right? So sometimes they have to like stay focused on their mission, but also the organization, people join the organization for help with their own stuff, right? And that's also part of the equation. So what do you think are the best practices for organizations to make sure that they're staying aligned with their mission, but not, abandoning their people that are, in their group? Because I'm usually, honestly, as the elf, I'm usually running towards all the people that have gotten thrown out saying, how can I help you? Because that's the people I work with, the little people, who were so unimportant they had to be thrown out.
We haven't thrown anyone out of our organization, to the best of my knowledge, in all of our years. So we've been around since 1982, and I mean, at least part of the reason
that's not easy, man. That's not easy.
And I've been the coordinator for the National War Tax Resistance Coordinating Committee since 2018, but I've been kind of involved with them since 1999, and going to different meetings when I was a much younger person. I served on what we would essentially call their board, but they work. We have 2 business meetings a year, and those meetings are done on a consensus model. So it can be slower at times,
Yeah.
But I don't know if this is how we also work at our local Catholic worker here in Milwaukee. And I'd say it's a common way at many Catholic workers is this consensus model that if one person disagrees, then, or we'd say blocks, because you can sometimes disagree, but say you're going to stand aside, so there's different methods of consensus. We follow a pretty strict model of consensus, which, works because most of our business meetings, even though there are thousands of people that the National War Tax Resistance Group is connected with, when it comes to our business meeting, those aren't usually the things that attract lots of people. So you might only have 20, 25, 30 folks at most show up for our business meeting. And so but I think keeping the focus on our mission is what holds us all together, because that group of people, it's a mixture of anarchists, libertarians, Democrats, Green Party, anarchists, some Republicans. But the thing that holds together is this notion that we're, mostly on the grounds of conscience, against the use of taxes for military purposes. Similar to, if I'm now, because there's not a draft, it doesn't really, you can't claim conscientious objector status at the moment, but there is at a minimum in the United States this notion that if you're a conscientious objector and you were drafted, you wouldn't be forced into military service. And this notion of war tax resistance is taking it one step further, that, well, if I wouldn't be a part of military service myself, why would I pay someone else to go and kill people in my name? So it's kind of saying I want to pull back from that. So in that sense, it's from a place of conscience, but it's also hopefully something that, with people doing it as a group and many people doing it publicly, it's a way to raise awareness. Because oftentimes when people hear that you're refusing to pay federal income taxes, it does kind of get someone's attention, sometimes in a very negative way, but sometimes just like, well, how are you not in jail? Or how, it's often as a method, not just of conscience, but as witness, can start a conversation and make someone think about, oh yeah, I guess I might be against what's happening in Gaza, which, estimates are that about 70 to 75% of the weapons used in Gaza were funded by the United States. So when we pay our federal income taxes, we're supporting that. So this is kind of hopefully a complementary method for things such as the situation in Gaza, the genocide happening there, to raise awareness of it in a different manner. But getting more back to your question of, as an organization, kind of focusing on what is our purpose. But I think also that for myself, that consensus model has been very important, because you're not just trying to talk 50% of the people into an idea. Like if you're going to propose a way forward or some new campaign, or I think we should be doing this, it's in order to have everyone say, I either agree with this, or I see that most people agree with this. I don't think will work maybe, but I'll stand aside and go along with it. I don't think I won't block, because blocking is only for if you view an idea as kind of it contradicts the mission. I
think that would actually appeal to anarchists, because the thing is that, democracy actually does not protect minorities; it actually persecutes them. So, I do definitely appreciate that consensus. I've worked in different, organizations and seen consensus sometimes slow things to unacceptable levels. But if you're the person being left out behind, it doesn't feel that unacceptable now. So I appreciate that, and that's kind of cool. I think it's pretty cool, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
So the next question. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Or I was just gonna say. So I'll just finish with, so at the very least, even that person who's standing aside will always say, like, "Oh, we see you're standing aside, but do you want to say why?" And everyone, especially when you do important decisions, we go around and everyone has their say. So it's a way to make sure that everyone is heard, and I think that's how you're going to hear the best ideas, is by hearing from everybody. We don't want to we don't want to stifle creativity or make or do something that we shouldn't be doing.
That's amazing. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And the personality issues, don't. I mean, I don't think it's possible to get away from that, right? Like this person voted down or said something I didn't like last week, so I'm gonna torch his stuff, right? How do you deal with that? This is not the easy question, but I'm just
Yeah, it's a mix. I think, like with the National War Tax Resistance Coordinating Committee, because we only meet twice a year for our business meeting, we're only working the consensus model really twice a year. We do have like
okay.
a kind of an emergency if something comes up we really need to discuss in the interim. But for all sakes and purposes, we're only meeting twice a year for 3 hours each time. And so it's kind of like, I just need to get through 3 hours. It's not a, but where with our Catholic worker community, we're meeting weekly, and there, I think to try to help prevent some of those issues and personality things. The difference there would be, in order for someone to join that community, first we'd, someone would be around kind of seeing what we do, learning the work. And then before they could move in and join that community, everyone would have to agree that they're a good fit. And so if anyone says, I see potential problems, but then once someone's in, they're kind of in. So we do take this intake process seriously. But with the National War Tax Resistance Group, it's more just anyone who wants to come can come, because we're not a live-in community. We're not meeting every week. So it's everyone's welcome, and we just hope that everyone has. People are usually pretty good about having patience with each other for the 3 hours we meet every 6 months. But there definitely are personality conflicts from time to time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's pretty cool. All right, just so you know, I've tried different like voting models, right? Like there's something called approval voting, which is actually championed by a guy named Blake Huber. There's another one like ranked choice voting is extremely popular right now. I'm actually against ranked choice voting, just so you know personally. That's because ranked choice voting adds elements of complexity that people with more resources can figure out how to game the system easier. You know what I mean? That's one thing that I do like about also your model of making decisions. It's very simple. We got to get everyone on board. It's the goal is very clear, right? And then you don't have anybody really feeling left out or left behind. I think it's a very cool system when it works, right? So I can see some pluses there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is going to be, you've been active for a long time. I think that you said that you started the National War Tax being the director in 2018. So that's like 7 years. So, and that's a leadership position. You've been involved in activism for longer. When you first started activism, you probably had a certain view of the world, and now, right, having been an experienced activist, things may have changed, or maybe something didn't. But have you had any specific perspective shifts? Maybe a good way to interpret the question is, if you could go back to when you first started, what would you tell yourself, or is there certain things that you became aware of now? How has your perspective changed?
I'm more laid back now, more patient with myself and with others. I think when I first became an activist, I probably with my, not only was I reading like the founders of the Catholic worker movement, like Dorothy Day, but I was very attracted to Gandhian nonviolence, and kind of held that up as the standard. I probably still would as an ideal. But I'd say early on, if someone was part of a campaign or movement that maybe didn't espouse all of Gandhian nonviolence, such as, Gandhi had this notion that in order to most likely meet the end where the opponent could be your friend, before you do anything, you should let your opponent know what you're going to do. There definitely are a lot of groups that, have legitimate concerns that if they're open in what they're going to do, they could be opening themselves up to certain consequences, or, so I'd say I've kind of relaxed. I may still kind of hold that up as an ideal, but I've maybe relaxed some of that, and partially because it also holding such a strict nonviolent ideal limits collaboration, or sometimes can be used as an excuse against collaboration. So I want to make sure that I'm
Wait,
really.
hold on. Let's.
Oh,
I'm
sure.
sorry. Let's just rewind it back because I heard a couple of things that I wasn't really sure about. Okay, so one of the things that I heard you say was that there is a something about communications. You said was it, or did I mishear the word?
I don't think I said communication. So maybe that was, I don't know what I said.
Okay, maybe that's what that was. Okay, maybe that's what ran through the issue there. Okay, so as in terms of all right. So I'm sorry. Go ahead then. Yeah.
Sure. So, just, for instance, I know that with kind of the Black Lives Matter movement, especially in the wake of George Floyd,
Yeah.
I know some people of kind of the, I don't know, I hate to use the word traditional peace movement because there's peace movements that beyond the, that's often what they're just called, but kind of, what you might picture is kind of older, white haired, white people, activists. I know many of them had this notion of nonviolent, have had this notion of nonviolence is you need to make sure if you're having a conversation with the police, it's always very cordial and you keep your voice very low. And, they're like, well, I'm not comfortable being a part of this Black Lives Matter protest because there's people that are yelling at the police, or maybe there's people in the protests that are swearing, or, so I just give that as a concrete example of, I think sometimes activists, and in the past, myself, we're holding up this kind of litmus test of nonviolence. And if it didn't exactly meet on my standards what it should be, well, I'm not going to participate in that group. And, so I think over the years, I realized that that's too limiting. I still want to have some notion of nonviolence, but I'll say my notions of nonviolence and what's acceptable have expanded because I want to make sure that I'm not just on an island promoting my own agenda.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a deep answer. It made me think about some things. Yeah.
So that's probably
that,
that's probably the biggest way that I've seen a change, which I think has been very fruitful for me, and making sure that I'm really listening. Going back to my previous answer of listening, to me, that's been very enriching for me. And I think it's enriched my activism and hopefully enriched me as a person.
How can people find out more about your work? You have like a website, you have like social media, like how can people find out more?
Yeah, so we have our website. I'm just making, if someone Googled war tax.
I think you can actually share your screen, or I could share screen if you want. Go ahead.
Sure. So if someone wanted to find our website, which I have too many screens open.
I'll pop it on my screen just for a second. Yeah, when you're ready, you can do it, but I'll just pop it up on mine. So it's.
That sounds good. But if you Googled war tax resistance, otherwise it's our acronym NWTRCC.org. NWTRCC.org. But if you just Google war tax resistance, you'll find our website. All of our resources are available for free. People sometimes want to order it and have the paper, so we
doesn't want to share the window, but I guess the window's loading. Yeah, the window's loading. Sorry, so that's what's taking so long. I tried to share the screen, but it says that I can't share yet, but the window's still spinning. So
okay,
maybe my internet's slow or something like that. I'm not sure exactly. Stuttering. Sorry about that. Okay,
no
and the thing is that now that they have your website, we'll share in a second. What do they have to look forward to? You got any particular things coming up?
Right now, a lot of what we do happens in the spring. Like obviously tax day is a huge thing for us, which is already passed, but we kind of will help organize and collect information from different groups across the country that are having tax day protests and promote those. In early May and early November, we have war tax resistance conferences. As the screen shows there right now, we're having our spring appeal and we're having a raffle. So if someone felt like making a donation to Newtrick, they could also enter our raffle during the month of June, where
Holy crap, wait a minute. I think I know this guy. Do you know this guy right here? Do you see the guy who I circled right there?
Wait, was it the guy on the left holding the sign?
Yeah. The old guy, Zool. You know him?
No, but I know that that photo was taken by Ed Hedeman, who's a war tax resistor and very active in. Well, he's in Brooklyn, but he's very active
New York.
in New York
That's
City.
from New York then.
So that's a picture of. I think that's a picture of a tax day protest in Manhattan from Tax Day 2024.
Interesting.
But we have always.
I have interviewed him on my channel, just so you know.
Oh, okay. I've seen him in tax day protests, but that's I don't know him personally. But we have different, if someone wants to, you can see, we also at the top of our page, you can see we have Facebook page, Twitter page, Instagram page, Blue Sky page, kind of all of the things where we'll promote different items. We have a video on that main page, kind of the basics of war tax resistance if someone wanted to learn about it. And if someone's an employee, you might be like, well, the federal income taxes are already removed from my paycheck anyways. There's a link on there for W-4 resistance, which you can change your W-4 form at any time, which with your employer, and either stop or lower the amount of federal income taxes taken out of your paycheck. So we have kind of everything.
Give me a second. Yeah, give me a second. My internet connection is horrible. All right, can you hear me?
Yep, I could hear you the whole time. You were just frozen for a little bit. But
give me a second. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I see. There's a little delay. But people can get lost in our website. We've really tried to think of any resource or any situation. What if you're thinking about getting married or you are married? How could this affect your partner? What kind of conversation might you want to have? Like, if you can think about it, or you're in oh no. If you can think, I'll keep talking. If you can think about it as a situation or your situation, if you're interested in war tax resistance, we probably have it on our website. And if you would just,
I'm sorry, my internet went down for a second. Yeah, I've been having
sure.
Actually, this picture's a lot clearer now. Something happened before where it was just really so stuttering and bad, but it seems to have cleared up. So the signal's still horrible. This could drop out at any moment.
Sure.
I'm actually going to, if this ends, I'm going to try to hook up my other phone because I definitely want to have this conversation. There's some huge things.
Uh-oh. I lost you maybe like 10 seconds ago. You're frozen and I can't hear you. I still can't hear you and you're frozen. But I think the live stream's still going. Oh no. Other things about war tax resistance. I don't know. Check out our page. It's has everything you could think of. There's also, if you go to the page, I wonder if it'll let me share my screen. I could show a couple things. Share screen. No.
Hello?
Hello.
Something with my internet. Oh my goodness.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's my internet. I'm so sorry. Yeah. I'm about to go ahead.
Or no problem.
I'm gonna link through my phone. I'm gonna find my cell phone. I'm gonna link through that internet because there's some really important stuff that I need to actually discuss with you. you, and that's actually coming up
Oh no.
now. So
I caught some of that, but it was freezing and
I'm so sorry. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
actually quite vital things going on in the anti when we talk to you about this stuff.
Oh no. I don't know if you can hear me, but you're frozen again and I cannot hear you probably for like the last 10, 15 seconds. Just me now. Oh, my phone's ringing. Hello. Sure. Should I leave the studio? Okay.